The World Health Organization says it will encourage medical facilities to stop using mercury-containing thermometers and blood pressure monitors by 2020. The announcement follows the adoption of the Minamata Convention at a UN conference that ended in Kumamoto, southwestern Japan, on Friday. The treaty would regulate the production, export and import of products containing the metal after 2020. Mercury-based devices are still widely used for their accuracy. The WHO will ask governments and international organizations not to produce or trade in mercury-based thermometers and blood pressure monitors and will assist in efforts to switch to non-mercury devices.
In 2013, a new international convention to control mercury emissions was opened for signing in Japan in response to the reality that mercury pollution is a global problem that no country can address unilaterally.
The EPA again welcomes the announcement in Parliament under the budget 2014 for the $1 billion allocation to fund mercury abatement technology and support the miners to implement mercury-free technology, so to speak. This has been on the radar of the EPA for some time now, especially in our experiences in the small-scale and medium-scale mining activities across the country. Issues of river contamination from mercury, issues with the communities, mining communities raising issues of contamination from mercury.
One of the first things that we would embark in very shortly is to have a nationwide education awareness program. There's a reason for the banning of mercury. It's poisonous, it's toxic, it gets into the food system, gets into fish, affects the unborn fetus, affects other persons, etc. And until people recognizes the dangers of mercury, it will be very difficult to move them away.
In October last year, October 7th, 2013, the government of Guyana signed on to the Minamata Convention. And if you recall, Minamata in the 1950s in Japan, in the city of Japan, there was mercury exposure, and a lot of people died and so on from it. And it was only fitting at that point in time, last year, to sign that convention in Minamata, Japan. And so Guyana is the signatory, is now a signatory, and I must say probably one of the few countries in this part of the world that is a signatory to that convention.
Polluting waterways and vegetation through mining activities is an offense. be responsible, protect the environment.
We have to stick with what we signed on to in terms of international regulation that relates to utilization of mercury in the process, and more importantly, to ensure that we're recovering as much as we can in the recovery process in the field, on the mines. And we have had a lot of engagements with all the stakeholders within recent times, the last 2 months or so, as to what the strategies ought to be and how each player will contribute towards ensuring that this matter is addressed in a way that makes for improved recoveries and reduction of mercury.
Mercury affects the nervous system, our immune system, and our digestive system. And simple symptoms like headaches, insomnia, getting more severe to tremors, and things like that are some of the symptoms that you can find that someone who is exposed to mercury for a prolonged period of time or in high concentrations can experience. So someone out there working in the fields might feel dizzy, may have headaches, may just have some difficulty breathing or not feeling well, and they may not necessarily consider that it is related to the use or the current job of what they are doing and involved in.
We're in the process of setting up our water quality unit, and that unit will be tasked to ensure that our waterways, and especially where mining is concerned, to not only just testing water, but as Gita referred, biological analysis and so on. So full ecological assessment, you can actually monitor and test those locations, known locations where there's potential or assumed exposure and contamination.
Guyana's wildlife management and conservation regulations will enable the development of systems, including penalties and mechanisms for enforcement for the protection of local wildlife. Guyana is making more lands and resources available for mineral production and investments in the natural resources sector. These initiatives are being pursued in keeping with the country's commitment to protect the environment.
What happens inland also impacts on our oceans. And globally, the highest evidence of mercury contamination is found in fish, in marine fish that are food sources as well. The large carnivorous fish like the marlins and the kingfishers and so on. And that is coming through rivers and so on. And across the region, that's why there's need for, not only at the national level, but at the sub-region and regional level, for coordination in terms of phasing out mercury. So assuming if all the countries are signatory and they work towards it, the impacts on the sea will be reduced. Recognizing that our economy is heavily dependent on gold mining, that's one of the major economic activities. And to bring people into compliance will have to be some time given to them. So that I think it was safe to say within 10 years we can reach a stage of complete or mercury-free mining.
Check us out on the internet for this and every episode of El Dorado Shines. Just go to YouTube, search for El Dorado Shines and start watching. Or like us on Facebook and receive instant updates.
As business operators, we need to be responsible.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
The next step basically is for a national action plan to be developed for Guyana. And the Global Environmental Facility, through the United Nations Development Program, has allocated funds, about $25 million under the current cycle, JEF cycle. JEF operates in cycles. This is the 5th cycle of funding, and that is to assist countries to assess the, do an inventory of mercury in the countries, and then develop a national action plan in terms of reducing its use, and then eventually to phase out the actual complete use of mercury.
What we are currently doing is GGMC has employed a consultant, and this consultant is looking at mercury, the importers of mercury, the distributors of mercury, and the users of mercury, and so on. This is to give the ministry an idea as to not only the amount of mercury that comes into the country, but for what and how it is used.
Guyana, recognizing and preparing itself, having signed on to the Minamata Convention, has started some initial baseline work that needs to be done. So under the ministry, with support of GGMC and others, they have started a study for the sources of mercury in Guyana in the mining sector and how it's distributed. So that study is currently ongoing. As far as I'm aware, the report is being finalized at the moment. So it will give you an idea of the majority of of mercury that is imported appears to be for the mining sector, but that is what a study will confirm, and then also how it's distributed in perhaps the different regions of Guyana where you can expect to find the greatest amount of mercury in the mining sector. So they are currently looking at that report to further provide a baseline for Guyana and where it is and where it needs to be. The EPF already started to make progress in that regard at looking at the development of guidelines to look at mercury contaminated waste. And in the process of doing that, we are not limiting ourselves to the mining sector. So we are currently at the initial stages of developing this guideline, and we will consider the proper use, handling, storage of equipment, and where and how mercury is contained, so that number one, the public can be educated at how it's to be done, and number two, provide options of how it can be better used and managed to prevent and reduce contamination.
The Guyana Mining School and Training Center Incorporated was established to improve education in technical training for the mining sector. A grant agreement is in place between World Wildlife Fund Incorporated and GGMC to develop a curriculum for the mining school.
We must do everything we can to keep our surroundings clean.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
Improvement of technology and mining practices are also very important, and they're important for several reasons. The first of which is to move the miners away from the use of mercury and to help them to improve their recovery. New technologies such as the centrifuge system is what the ministry is looking to have these miners use. These systems have already been proven in other countries, and they've been shown to increase the recovery rates in mining operations.
So we would look at see if some of the local manufacturers can develop some kind of equipment that would be widely available in the cheap, etc., and give either the same level of recovery as mercury or even better. And this is the way we are pursuing that. The other step we're taking is continuously doing some research on some of these equipment. Every piece of equipment cannot work in every area. Each area has its own geology, its mineralogical makeup. The gold particles, some are fine, some are coarse, some are flat. The shapes are different, etc. These equipment are based on some of those factors. So you need to do a proper evaluation before investing in equipment. And we will up our research and development unit, ensure that we go all around, collect as much samples as possible, and do this kind of research and provide the results and advice to miners wanting to go in that way. This would be the medium to long-term kind of arrangement.
We're looking at internationally, nationally as well. We're making plans in place to look at technologies that will be mercury-free. But there are options that are available to be considered, and these are things that we will consider as we move along in the development of the action plan and actually in implementing new technologies that are mercury-free.
I always encourage the passengers not to throw garbage out of the window.
Stop littering. Do the right thing.
In the interim, we would look at the awareness program. We would look at the current system with the miners and see if we can tweak it a bit to improve recovery immediately.
In the interim for now, we're basically ensuring that miners are very responsible and are cognizant of the dangers of mercury and making sure that they use it in a way that it has minimal impact on the environment. So we ensure that they have to use retards where they actually burn the gold, recover mercury, and they recover over, I think it's like 95% of mercury when they use this type of technology. And they get to reuse it, so it's a cost benefit to them. It's less material they have to go and purchase. So those are one of the ways we try to help, mitigate the way in which mercury is looked upon and used.
So far, we have been doing lots of things as it relates to monitoring and ensure good practices in the hinterland. For example, we have a component which we describe as the environmental management. We have a component that is deal with occupational health and safety. We deal a component that deal with reclamation, and there's all that aspect combined to make mining a safe one or less destructive as it relates to the environment.
If we notice an area is in dire straits, we can then try and enforce our compliance and enforcement regulations, which to prevent and protect the environment and protect people's health.
Time to time, there are important issues and important questions that are asked in terms of what is our developmental outlook and how much are we willing to compromise the environment, as it were, to bring about development, to bring about wealth, bring about prosperity for people. And if we reflect on that particular query, we have to then go back to our national development documents, strategies, and the outlook of successive governments, and certainly what is necessary and required to take our country forward. And one such document we can go back to, which is in a way outdated, has more or less gone past its time, is the National Development Strategy. And then if we can look at our poverty reduction strategy, then our National Competitiveness Strategy, and more recently our low carbon development strategy. And one cross-cutting element of all those documents has been how it is do we strike and achieve the balance of developing our rich natural resources and at the same time managing and effectively managing our environment and creating, as it were, that level of harmony. And if one look and one study those documents, those developmental guidelines, we would see that, and it must be recalled that these documents emanated from the people of Guyana through extensive consultation. It recognized that whilst there may be conflict, it recognized that it is not a situation of one or the other. That is, we either develop our natural resources and move ahead with development, or we do not proceed in that direction and we focus only on the issue of preservation of the environment. But those developmental documents and the policies enumerated therein speak about us moving ahead with development, moving ahead with prosperity, because we recognize that our major economic growth poles will come from the utilization of our natural resources. But at the same time, given due regard and given due attention both at policy as well as programmatic levels in terms of management and sustainable utilization of those resources, but effective and sensible management of our environment.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment is creating conditions for the responsible and sustainable exploitation of the country's natural resources. Operators are encouraged to mine with the environment in mind.
Alright, basically the most fundamental advice is to make sure that the operators and the miners that are going to be around these machines follow all of the safety regulations. There are a lot of safety tags on every Caterpillar machine, and there's also the owners and operation manual, which we always encourage everybody to at least read. It has a lot of information that can be followed from the regular miner to the regular operator. The main objective is that these machines should be taken care of, and we would encourage everybody to follow all the safety guidelines as much as they could. Sometimes we may forget, but it's important that we follow them before and after every operational trip. Several basic things that they can actually do is actually check the oil level, the hydraulic oil level, as well as the coolant. They can actually check that visually without even going into the monitor. And those are some of the basic things that they can do just to avoid having like overheating problems or engine problems. Mounting procedure from Caterpillar is that we must face the machine, and basically there's going to be about 3 points of contact. We can use 2 hands and either the right foot or the left foot. In this case I'm going to use the left, and I'm going to mount it face forward, enter and turn to sit on the actual cabin seat. These are the seat belts. Take the keys out and we exit just like how we came in. Grab the rail bars, first foot on the tracks, the next one on the actual support, and then down. And then we do another inspection like when we first started.
Check us out on the internet for this and every episode of Dorado Shines. Just go to YouTube, search for Dorado Shines and start watching. Or like us on Facebook and receive instant updates.
Welcome to Guyana, the gateway to South America. A pristine haven of abundant natural resources. We are a nation born in sacrifice and enriched by our togetherness. When we play, we celebrate every effort. When we celebrate, we salute more than success. We exude our right to move forward.